Hi everyone, here's what's bothering me tonight. So, thanks to Lily Simpson, links down below, I was made aware that today is Trans Awareness Week, and Friday, today, is the Trans Day of Remembrance, where people take pause and remember the murder and deaths of trans people over the course of trans history. And that's what we're going to talk about, and why I find it deeply bothering and upsetting. So, I'm not trans, so I don't know what that struggle feels like, but I have several trans friends. And the idea of them being murdered by virtue of them just expressing themselves is really disturbing. And the idea that, you know, so many just ridiculous and gross and misogynistic men have murdered trans women because, oh, that's gross and weird. Well, maybe you shouldn't have been sexually assaulting people. Like, it's all so upsetting. And I also think of people who suddenly get very judgmental and uncomfortable around the subject and seem incapable of letting people embrace a very radical form of freedom. And yet people feel the need to police their bodies. And, as people are fond of saying, the first Pride was a riot. And the fact that this continues to this day, where trans people are still routinely murdered by families, exes, spouses. Why? Why can't you just accept the way someone wants to express themselves? Why can't you just accept the difference? Why can't you just accept people? It is so deeply frustrating and depressing for me personally to have to, occasionally be confronted by this with, the murder of black trans activists for the crime of being activists. The murder of trans people in Latin America for having the audacity to live their best possible life, or attempt to, before it was snuffed out, before they even had a chance to really shine. Why does this violence need to exist in the world when we could just say, cool, and just be done with it? Isn't that supposed to be what acceptance and liberty is all about? Who are they harming? Who are trans people genuinely harming by expressing themselves freely and with the hopes of doing so without judgment and fear of reprisal or murder? I hope that we can find a way to continue to make strides and improvements as not just a Western society, but as a global society. Because for me personally, it's easy for me to accept people, even different people, just wanting to express themselves freely. I may not understand all people, but I understand the desire to want to speak freely and without judgment and without repercussion for just wanting to express yourself. Like to try and make it relatable to people who are not trans. Imagine if people prevented you from getting jobs or tried to fire you from your existing job or wouldn't date you or would treat you with scorn or try and kill you because of the music you like to listen to or the foods you like to eat or the preferred hair color of someone or a clothing style. Something that has to do with your own self-expression and self-actualization. Imagine if that carried the risk of death. Imagine if that carried the risk of violence. That is what trans people have to deal with on a daily goddamn basis. I hear it from my friends. I hear it from my mutuals on Twitter and on YouTube and Facebook. And this is in what is supposed to be a progressive Western society. And yet we still need to take pause during the Trans Week of Awareness, which again, if it wasn't for Lily Simpson, I probably would have missed out on this, which shows how much we care about it as a society, which should be deeply upsetting and troubling in its own right. And then it's also the fact that today, the Friday, is supposed to be a day of mourning for all those trans people who have been unjustly murdered and brutalized for the crime of expressing themselves. And I haven't seen much of that on my timelines. And that, I think, is really what's ultimately bothering me at the end of the day. That in a supposedly Western, free, liberal, and safe and democratic society, it is very clear today that we still have a mountain of work to accomplish. And unfortunately, it's not getting done. And a lot of us don't even realize it needs to happen. And that is what's bothering me today.